Okay, we're looking at the Hughes OH-6 Casyuse. This was a Vietnam helicopter, if I understand correctly. I stumbled, well, didn't stumble upon this. I've been listening on and off to the Billings Gazette Voices of Vietnam interviews, and some guy was mentioning the Loaches quite a bit. And so, well, here we are. The Hughes OH-6 Casyuse is a single-engine light helicopter designed and produced by the American aerospace company Hughes Helicopters. Its formal name is derived from the Casyuse people, while its Loach nickname comes from the acronym for the Light Observation Helicopter program under which it was procured. The Casyuse people are a Native American tribe in what is now the state of Oregon in the United States. The Casyuse tribe shares a reservation and government in northeastern Oregon with the Umatilla and the Walla Walla tribes as part of the Confederated Tribes of ... Okay, this is a long article, so I'm going to skim a bit. The OH-6 was developed to meet the United States Army Technical Specification 153, issued in 1960 to replace its Bell H-13CO fleet, which is that one. Looks kind of like a MASH helicopter, so maybe it was used in the Korean War. The Model 369 submitted by Hughes competed against two other finalists, Fairchild Hiller, or Hyler, I don't know, Hiller, and Bell, so two other companies there, for a production contract. On the 26th of February 1963, the first prototype conducted its maiden flight. The Model 369 had a distinctive teardrop-shaped fuselage that was crash-worthy and provided excellent external visibility. Its four-bladed, full-articulated main rotor made it particularly agile, and it is suitable for personnel transport, escort and attack missions, and observation. During May 1965, the U.S. Army awarded a production contract to Hughes. During 1966, the OH-6 began service with the U.S. Army and promptly entered active combat in the Vietnam War. In theater, it was commonly operated in teams with rotorcraft, such as the Bell AH-1 Cobra attack helicopter, which we're going to get a picture. Ooh, one of them. They feisty looking. So it was often with one of them. Using so-called hunter-killer tactics to flush out and eliminate hostile ground targets. I'm sure that could be a whole nother article, but they don't have it. The OH-6 would act as bait to draw enemy fire and mark targets for other platforms, such as the AH-1, to attack. In one clandestine incident in 1972, known as the Veen wiretap, a pair of OH-6As were heavily modified and used by the CIA Central Intelligence Agency via Air America to infiltrate Vietnamese high-level communications, providing valuable intelligence. Reportedly, 964 out of the 1,422 OH-6As produced for the U.S. Army were destroyed in Vietnam alone. Again, that is 964 out of 1,422 were destroyed. That's wild. What is this? Vinya? I don't know. That. And this a little bit about these guys acting as bait matches with what I heard in the Billings Gazette interview. Sounds like they were agile enough that they could just hop in, draw fire, and then someone else would come and pick out that fire. I had heard that it would draw fire, and like once it took on fire, they would like drop a smoke flare, and then the other attack helicopters would come in and light it up. Killing people, ending lives. During 1967, following price escalations for the OH-6, the U.S. Army reopened the program to bids for as many as 2,700 additional airframes beyond the 1,300 OH-6s already contracted. Following a competitive fly-off and a sealed bidding process, Hughes lost the contract to Bell, resulting in the competing Bell OH-58 Kiowa being produced. That nasty fella. That is a heck of a looking airplane, helicopter. Yeah. Um, the OH-6 Model 369 was licensed produced overseas by the Japanese aerospace company Kawasaki Heavy Industries for both military and civilian operators. It was also developed into a civilian helicopter, the Model 500, produced into the 21st century by MD Helicopters as the MD 500. That is a cool looking helicopter as a civilian. I cannot deny. Yeah, look at that thing. Let's open that up real quick. Look at that. That is just a good looking helicopter. I think I had a toy of these when I was a kid. Yeah, that just I don't know what it is. I don't know what societal shaping like nurture thing goes on that makes me say like that is a darn fine looking helicopter. I don't know what it is about it that looks better than something else or what it could have that would make me say that it's not a good looking helicopter, but it just looks slick. Don't know why. Really wonder what the explanation there is. Anyway, development. The background. During 1960, the United States Army issued Technical Specification 153 for a light observation helicopter, LOH, capable of fulfilling various roles on the battlefield, including personnel transport, escort, casualty evacuation, observation, and attack missions. These would be used to replace its fleet of Bell H-13CO, as we already read, a compact first-generation rotorcraft. 12 companies opted to participate in the competition, Hughes Tool Company's aircraft division being one of them, submitted the Model 369 as its response. Two of these designs, those submitted by Fairchild Hiller and Bell, were selected as finalists. Okay, we basically already read this. In terms of its basic configuration, the Model 369 had an atypical teardrop-shaped fuselage, a feature that led to personnel sometimes referring to it as the flying egg. This shaping, combined with the provision of internal bulkheads, has been attributed as giving the rotorcraft its uncommonly strong crashworthiness properties. This aspect was further bolstered by the use of self-sealing fuel tanks that lowered the likelihood of post-impact fire breaking out. The pilot was provisioned with excellent external visibility via its large plexiglass windscreen, while its four-bladed, fully articulated main rotor meant it was considerably more agile than the preceding H-13CO. It would often be crewed by a pilot and an observer. Up to 5 passengers or up to 1,000 pounds of cargo could be carried internally. How does a self-sealing fuel tank work? Um, They have layers of rubber and reinforcing fabric, one of vulcanized rubber and one of untreated natural rubber, which can absorb fuel when it comes into contact with it. When a fuel tank is punctured, the fuel seeps into these layers, causing the untreated layer to swell, closing, and thus sealing the puncture. Fair enough. Cool, cool, cool. Into flight. On the 27th of February 1963, the first Model 369 performed its maiden flight. Originally designated as the YHO-6A according to the Army's designation system, the aircraft was redesignated as the YOH-6A in... Okay, so it went from the YHO to the YOH. In 1962, when the Department of Defense created a joint designation system for all aircraft. A total of 5 prototypes were built, all of which were powered by a single Allison T63A5A turboshaft engine. Do we get a picture? We do. Look at that rotary engine, turboshaft rather. Capable of producing 252 shp, something horsepower. I don't know what S would be in this. Yeah, I don't know. Or 188 kilowatts. The prototypes were delivered to the U.S. Army at Fort Rucker, Alabama, where they competed against the other 10 prototype aircraft produced by Bell and Fairchild Hiller. During the course of the competition, the Bell submission YOH-4 was eliminated as being underpowered. It is powered by the 250 shp or 186 kilowatt, that is 2 kilowatts less, T63A5, as opposed to, I suppose, the T63A5A. Accordingly, the bidding for the LOH contract came down to Fairchild Hiller and Hughes. Ultimately, Hughes was selected as the winner of the competition. Cool. So the Bell submission was YOH-4. The Hughes was YOH-6A. So this is all Army designations. During May 1965, the U.S. Army awarded a production contract to Hughes. The initial order for 714 rotorcraft was subsequently increased to 1,300, along with an option for another 114. Hughes' price was $19,860 per airframe without the engine, while Hiller's price was $29,415 per airframe also without the engine. So 20,000 versus 30,000. That's incentive right there. Not that the military government seems to care too much about spending during wartime. After all, that's why we get into war, isn't it? Anyway, the Hiller design, designated OH-5A. Do we get a picture? Okay, that was its competitor. Yuck. It's not a cool-looking helicopter. Just looks dumb. Don't ask me why, because I don't know. Anyway, whoops. We'll take a second to look at this prototype of the Casyuse. Cool. And here's an OH-6 in flight. Yeah. Okay. The Hiller design, which did not win, had featured a boosted control system, while the Hughes design did not, a difference that accounted for some of the price increase. Hughes is reported to have told his confidant, Jack Reel, that he lost over $100 million to construct 1,370 airframes. An aerospace pioneer. It was reported that Howard Hughes had directed his company to submit a bid at a price beneath the actual production cost of the helicopter in order to secure its order. Accordingly, this tactic had resulted in substantial losses being incurred on the contract with the U.S. Army. The company had allegedly anticipated that an extended production cycle would eventually make the rotorcraft financially viable. I'm guessing it didn't really. Due to price escalations for both the OH-6 and spare components, the U.S. Army opted to reopen bids for the program in 1967. Accordingly, during '68, Hughes submitted a bid to build a further 2,700 airframes. Stanley Hiller complained to the U.S. Army that Hughes had used unethical procedures. Therefore, the Army opened the contract for rebidding by all parties. While Hiller did not participate in the rebidding, Bell opted to, submitting their redesigned Model 206. Following a competitive fly-off, the Army requested the manufacturers to submit sealed bids. Hughes bid $56,550 per airframe. Ooh, that's a lot more money. Yeah. Ooh, wowee. That's like their first bid was $20,000, so they upped it by 3 times. Man. Nearly. While Bell bid $54,200 respectively there. Respectively isn't in the article. Whatever. Reportedly, Hughes had consulted at the last moment with Reel, who recommended a bid of $53,550. So that's like not even $1,000 less than the Bell contract. Hughes, without informing Reel, raised the bid by $3,000 and thus lost the contract to Bell. Japanese production. A total of 387 OH-6 Hughes 369s were produced under license in Japan by the Japanese aerospace company Kawasaki Heavy Industries. These rotorcraft were operated by several different organizations, the majority of which were based in Japan. Military operators included the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force, JGSDF, Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, JMSDF, and the Japanese Coast Guard, no acronym. Furthermore, a number of civilian customers also flew Kawasaki-built OH-6s for a variety of missions, including emergency medical services, law enforcement, and agricultural work. Beginning in 2001, the JGSDF, which is the self-defense group, ground, OH-6s were supplemented by the indigenously developed. Is that a normal way to use indigenously? Indigenously developed Kawasaki OH-1. That's kind of sharp looking. Definitely looks. That's a 2001 helicopter. It feels much more early 90s, but I don't know helicopters, so whatever. Which was a more advanced observation helicopter, that Kawasaki OH-1. Okay, look at this. We actually are reading a lot of it. Well, how much? Okay, there. We might be able to get through all of this. Given my roommate doesn't come back in, that is cool. Operational history, entry into service, and world records. During 1966, the OH-1 entered service with the U.S. Army. OH-1, but we're talking about the OH-6. Its first overseas deployment, as well as into frontline combat, was the Vietnam War. The pilots dubbed the new helicopter Loach, a word created by pronunciation of LOH, Low Light Observation Helicopter acronym of the program that spawned the aircraft. Loach is also the name for numerous stream-dwelling carnivorous or insectivorous fishes, especially common in Southeast Asia, which specialize in hunting among substrates and dense cover. Okay. During 1964, so we're going back 2 years, the U.S. DoD, Department of Defense, issued a memorandum directing that all U.S. Army fixed-wing aircraft be transferred to the U.S. Air Force, while the U.S. Army transitioned to solely operating rotor-wing aircraft. Okay. Accordingly, the U.S. Army's fixed-wing airplane, the Cessna 01 Bird Dog, was utilized for artillery observation and reconnaissance flights, would be replaced by the incoming OH-6A. That's a cool looking Cessna. Whoopsie. Tail dragger. Love me a tail dragger. That's a cool looking Boyd. I'm sure they see the bush quite often. The Outback. He's beat up. Oh, that's bare bones, just as you want. Yes, sirree. Look at that. That's in that place. I think I've been there. Yeah, that looks nice. That's an interesting design. Royal Australian Air Force. Okay. That was a pretty shot. Anyway, gotta get back before my roommate comes back in from walking the dog. He's on a long walk. Where were we? Yes. Early on in the OH-6's career, the type demonstrated its performance in a particularly prominent manner via the setting of 23 individual world records for helicopters during 1966 in the categories of speed, endurance, and time to climb. On the 26th of March 1966, Jack Schweibelt set the closed-circuit distance record in a YOH-6A at Edwards Air Force Base, California, flying without landing for 1,739.96 miles. Subsequently, on the 6th of April 1966, Robert Ferry set the long-distance world record for helicopters by flying from Culver City, California, with over a ton of fuel to Ormond Beach, Florida. Dang. Covering a total of 1,923.08 nanometers? Oh, okay. Nautical miles. I was like, that is not far at all. So 2,213 miles in 15 hours. And near the finish at up to 24,000 feet of altitude. As of 2021, these records still stand. Right on, fellas. Vietnam War. In December 1967, the first OH-6As arrived in South Vietnam. Its straightforward design made it easier to maintain than most other helicopters. Its relatively compact 26 feet main rotor made it easier to use tight landing zones. While its light aluminum skin could be easily penetrated by small arms fire, it also crumpled and absorbed energy in a crash, while the rugged structure protected key systems and its crew. Even though the OH-6 was relatively difficult to shoot down, its occupants would often survive forced landings that would have likely been fatal on board other rotorcraft. The remaining H-13s were promptly withdrawn in favor of the OH-6s. Typically, missions were flown during the daylight, starting at dawn. Common roles included the clearance of landing zones and general intelligence observation flights. It became common for OH-6s to operate in teams with other rotorcraft, particularly the Bell AH-1 Cobra attack helicopter, as we saw earlier. This teamwork was actively encouraged by Army officials and led to the development of so-called hunter-killer tactics that sought to flush out and eliminate hostile ground targets. Such a team would have normally comprised a single OH-6 that would fly relatively slow and at a low altitude while attempting to spot the presence of enemies. If the OH-6 came under fire, the nearby Cobra would then strike at the revealed enemy. As to indicate the position of concealed enemy ground forces, the observer in the OH-6 would mark the spot using a smoke grenade, assisting other units in effectively firing upon them. Over time, the effectiveness of this pairing was such that enemies would often decide against firing on the relatively vulnerable OH-6 in fear of response that would be unleashed by the AH-1. Prior to the arrival of the AH-1, hunter-killer teams often relied on the firepower from armored models of the Bell UH-1 Iroquois. Do I say that right? Why am I not feeling like I am? Utility helicopter. And we'll have a part 2. See ya.